In the real world, actions have consequences. That's how people learn and how a society matures. But introduce government into that equation, and suddenly responsibility gets outsourced, incentives get distorted, and liberty begins to shrink beneath the weight of moral hazard. Moral hazard can plainly be defined as what happens when someone takes risks because they know someone else will bear the cost. It's the economic version of playing with house money, and no entity creates more moral hazard or more consistently rewards it than government. Government bailouts are a classic example. Whether it's Wall Street bankers who bet big on bad mortgages or automakers that couldn't balance their books, the result is the same. Those who take reckless risks are shielded from failure by taxpayers who had no say in the gamble. That is not just bad economics, it's an immoral policy. The government doesn't have its own money, it only has your money, and it uses it to keep afloat those institutions that are too big to fail but not too proud to beg. But the hazard doesn't end with corporations. Government has created moral hazards throughout society, in welfare programs, in student loans, in housing, and even in criminal justice. The more government assumes the role of a safety net with no bottom, the more it invites the kind of behavior that would never survive in a world of consequences. Take housing, for instance. When the government promised low-income Americans they could buy homes with no down payment and no credible plan to repay, it wasn't compassion. It was an invitation to disaster. When it all collapsed, the responsible, those who lived within their means, were punished through inflation, taxes, and economic stagnation. While government encouraged irresponsibility, it penalized good sense. In higher education, the same moral hazard exists. Students, aided by government loans, take on 6 figures of debt for degrees that don't translate in the job market. To make them more enticing, the loans are guaranteed and often deferred. During the Biden administration, several attempts were made to forgive them altogether. They did not succeed in their original mass bailout plan, although they were able to use bureaucratic tools and legal workarounds to cancel over $160 billion of student debt for selected groups. But the consequences go beyond economics. Moral hazard affects liberty at its core. When government repeatedly rescues people or industries from the consequences of their own decisions, it cultivates a culture of dependency, and dependency is the opposite of liberty. You cannot be free if you are trained to rely on the state for your survival. When people no longer expect to bear the fruits or the consequences of their actions, they become political wards, forever looking upward to Washington rather than inward to themselves or outward to their communities. Liberty withers not because it is forcibly removed, but because it is gradually surrendered in exchange for comfort and security. Even in law enforcement and governance, moral hazard festers. When prosecutors, police, or politicians know they can violate constitutional rights and face no personal liability due to doctrines like qualified immunity, they operate with a dangerous level of impunity. Power without accountability is the oldest form of tyranny. Yet the government shields its own while regulating every move of the citizen. The most dangerous moral hazard, however, arises when government expands its power in the name of protecting us from ourselves. Whether it's banning sodas, regulating speech, mandating health behaviors, or locking down society during a crisis, the logic is always the same. We can't trust individuals to act responsibly, so the government must intervene. But who holds the government responsible when it oversteps? When lockdowns destroy livelihoods? When mandates trample rights? No one. That's the ultimate moral hazard, unaccountable power. Founders like Jefferson understood that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance, not just against foreign threats, but against our own government's tendency to grow by assuming the risks and rights of its people. Today, the federal government functions less as a guarantor of liberty than as a guarantor of outcomes. And once you let government become the insurer of last resort for every risk, economic, social, or personal, you invite it into every corner of your life. Moral hazard does not remain confined to spreadsheets or courtroom arguments. It reshapes culture. It teaches a nation to shift blame, dodge responsibility, and expect that someone else, somewhere, somehow, will clean up the mess. But liberty demands ownership of your life, your mistakes, your debts, and your destiny. The tragedy is not merely that government-created moral hazards cost money or reduce efficiency. The tragedy is that they change the character of a free people, molding them not into citizens, but into dependents. A free society cannot endure when the lessons of cause and effect are replaced by the promise of bailout and rescue. Liberty is not built on guarantees, it is built on consequences and the freedom to face them.